Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Dubervac. I'm the Chief Economist for the Consumer Electronics Association. We're here at the 2015 International CES. I'm joined by Alexis Ohanian, founder of Reddit, author of Without Their Permission. We're going to be talking all kinds of topics over the next 30 minutes, so join us now. Let's start with the most important topic. As Redskin fans, how much longer do we have to wait, Alexis?
Oh man, it's been hard. We're winning off the field, right? This is the best time to be a fan.
It's a building year, Alexis.
Another one. It's the best time to be a fan though, because right now we are undefeated. So there's that. Yeah, it's tough. I'm also a Brooklyn Nets fan, so like I am just a professional masochist when it comes to sports teams. But you know, it's all right. It's okay. There's always next season. I'm still an RG3 supporter, though. I want to make that very clear. There are a lot of people who got off that bandwagon. I'm still on it. Robert's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. He'll be back.
So we'll be talking about all types of things in and outside of the Beltway, including the Redskins, I'm sure. Let's jump to the book for a little bit. What are the big takeaways? What do you want people to really walk away with?
The biggest thing for me is I know how lucky I've been. Reddit was the company I started out of college with my buddy Steve. Like, all of that was made possible because of open source software, because of the open internet, because of just great timing. And the last 10 years, everything that I've been a part of, all the companies I've invested in, being a partner at Y Combinator, like, has given me a front row seat. And I want as many people as possible to learn from that and then do even bigger and better things. And so this is, I hope, through my own experiences and people I've come to know, kind of a blueprint, as much as you can have one, for sort of reaching your own maximum potential of awesome for whatever it is you want to do, right? It's philanthropy, it's politics, it's activism, it's art, it's business. The internet affects everything. Everyone knows this here. And I've gotten to meet a lot of awesome people doing a bunch of stuff in so many different ways.
So one of the things you talk about in the book is when you went off to build Reddit, you were thinking about building the next homepage for the internet. And as I thought about that, you know, I look back to, say, 1995 when something like a Yahoo was the homepage of the internet, and the metrics we measured were how long can you keep people on that site. Then with the explosion of opportunity on the internet, the explosion of websites, we moved to something like a Google where it was looking and searching across hundreds of thousands of sites. And we've moved beyond that, and so now you move to something like a Reddit where you're curating a very unique, well-defined experience. So as we now push into the next phase of the internet, we'll go from 2 billion smartphones to 50 billion connected objects. What's the homepage of the internet look like over the next decade?
Oh, I hope it's Reddit. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like we have only scratched the surface. And look, here's the reality, right? Reddit is, at the end of the day, a platform for communities. It's forum software. That's been around since forever, right? There was open source forum software. There was Usenet. There's nothing that novel about what we've done. It was just that the execution was sort of timed right and well enough that it worked. This idea of sorting things and having them bubble up and down. And I think mobile is where we have not been as we haven't been as good about, because we built Reddit at a time when smartphones didn't exist. And as some of you may note, the aesthetic and design of Reddit has not changed significantly since 2005. But yet the site has continued to grow, which is great. It's doubling every year. But mobile is still a huge opportunity. So the front page of the internet of the future, I think mechanically will still work something like Reddit. Hopefully it will be Reddit. This idea that, like, you know, if you're among a community of Skins fans, bubbling up what is most important to you is going to be a lot better and more effectively done by thousands of people within a community like a subreddit, than even the most well-funded and smartest room of editors, right? It's not necessarily creating that content, but it's surfacing it and finding it. But mobile is the new thing. It's the new screen that we are spending more and more of our lives in front of. And the front page of the internet, whatever that's going to be, is going to have a really relevant life on mobile.
So let's talk a little bit about building communities. You talk about Reddit and how it helps facilitate communities. One of the things I've noticed as I've watched the evolution of the internet is that early on we used to really keep separate and distinct those separate identities, online versus our real-world identities. And then over time, those start to blur, and our real-world identities merge with our online identities. The smartphones become a bridge across those two identities. It's helping to move us seamlessly between what we're doing in the physical space and what we're doing in the digital space. Something as simple as tracking the number of steps we walk, catching up on where our friends are at a given moment in time. And we're starting to now use digital means to garner that information and to share that information, as opposed to the old analog way of, hey, we call our friends and we find out where they're at. Now we look at a variety of different services to convey that information and to find out where they're at. Talk about what it's going to be like to build those communities moving forward. Digital, online communities, offline communities, how they continue to blur and merge together, and what's going to be unique moving forward, and perhaps what was unique as you built Reddit when you thought about building those communities.
So the thing, okay, I know the thing we got right. We got a lot of things wrong. The thing we got right was Steve and I knew we were building a platform for communities. And this idea that, like, if we were successful one day, there'd be a community of Skins fans. And there'd be a community of, one of my favorites right now is our makeup addiction. And it's just people posting photos of themselves, hundreds of thousands of people posting photos of themselves, selfies, showing off the makeup that they've put on that day. Right? Every one of those communities is able to use the Reddit platform in a different way. But going forward, again, with mobile being such a big part of our lives now, we have ways of servicing communities that are like sort of inelegantly done right now on Reddit. For instance, right, there's an R Las Vegas community, right? It's a great community of people who live or are interested in Las Vegas, I guess. They're just interested in it. Talking about everything from a good burrito place to a great place to play poker to whatever they want, the news, the weather. But it's done in a pretty unintelligent way, right? You just have to subscribe to r/Las Vegas. Because 10 years ago, we didn't have easy ways to just instantly say, oh, clearly this person is in Las Vegas right now, right? This idea of location and building communities around that, you can look at a platform like Yik Yak or Secret, and both of them are really pushing into this idea of like community around physical space, where you can just open up your phone and be connected to a bunch of strangers all around you physically. So it's been done topically pretty well. I feel like Reddit is pretty peerless in that regard around topics. But location is a huge one that mobile enables that I think is wide open. And there are going to be instances, right, I may not actually care what, no offense, you all think about my favorite sports team, but, you know, so just because you're in my proximity, but I might really care what you think about this talk, because we're having a shared experience right now, and having that is really helpful. And there aren't a lot of, you know, like I said, Yik Yak and Secret are sort of the big ones right now, but it's still anyone's game.
So you think there's a lot more room in that arena?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I've only, okay, we started 10 years ago, and I've also had a front row seat with Y Combinator as an investor, and I'm an investor now, like 100 startups. So I spend a lot of time with late stage companies, and I'll tell you, I've seen so many just explode in years, in 3, 4, 5 years, that has me so convinced I don't know anything. I have no fucking clue, and I can only bet on there being more innovation.
So one of the things you just mentioned and you talk about in the book is the kind of the queuing up of data, right? Facebook is an approach of queuing data. Google is a way of queuing data, sorting, coordinating, kind of re-delivering data in a queued up fashion. Where else is that going to go? I mean, is it literally unlimited potentials when we start to post selfies of makeup design and other things like that? I mean, where else does it go?
Well, I hope all that data doesn't end up at the NSA, but clearly it has been and continues to be, which is just pretty depressing. And I want to be clear too. There's a common misconception that just because people want to take selfies all the time and tweet that they're here right now, that they don't care about privacy. And the reason that's a misconception is when we do that, when we do things that superficially seem to violate our own privacy, right? Me telling you all, like me checking in on Foursquare, look at me, I'm here. That is me soliciting, obviously, something that is a violation of my privacy, but I'm doing it on my terms. And what I think is clear, especially from the popularity of things like Snapchat, things like Secret and Yik Yak, is there is still a very clear desire for people to own, as best they can, some amount of their data, their location, their privacy. And I just think we can hopefully build tools that are going to allow people to feel that they have, to feel that they have this agency to want to share, because, right, the internet has become not just a place where we do business, it's a place where we do everything. We have our deepest, most thoughts there. And people need to feel like they have tools that allow them to do that. And we still haven't, we're still a long way from figuring that out. And not feel, right, that's a huge, there is on the one hand a huge business opportunity there for a company like Facebook to own and harvest all of that data about us. And they've been doing it. Google has done it very well for a number of years. But I think it's going to be really, really interesting, especially in light of the Edward Snowden revelations, as more and more countries start trying to take it on their own to balkanize the internet, which I don't think is the right answer, but it's understandable why they'd want to do it, that we need to figure out what the future is going to look like. I mean, the World Wide Web is much less impressive if it's just the web. The worldwide part is important.
So let's step back inside the Beltway then, and you talk about the risk of regulation and stymieing some of the growth potential of the internet. You were heavily involved together with CEA on SOPA and PIPA, yeah. And what are the things that keep you up today? What are the things that you worry about the most now?
And let me stress, CEA, Michael, CEA was the group that first brought me to DC and took me on my first lobbying trip, where I got just to meet with senators and reps and their staffs, and it was life-changing for me, because it was the first time I got really involved in politics about an issue that I deeply cared about. Against all odds, we triumphed. So imagine that, in the face of all that cynicism and all that lobbying money from Hollywood, the American people won because they used the internet, mobilized, and contacted their representatives. In that moment, government actually worked like it should have. The antibody, the white blood cells worked. And that was a really, really, just like I said, frankly, life-changing thing for me. So I'm grateful for you guys taking me, because I had no business putting on a suit. I had to borrow a tie from my dad. But I think the biggest threat right now, and I know I might make some friends here because of that, and by friends I mean enemies, is that some of our favorite corporations, cable companies, are trying to fuck with the internet. And we're really close. We have made a lot of progress since a year ago getting real net neutrality in place and getting this idea that all bits really should be treated equally, and that we don't want our internet to look like our damn cable bill. I don't want my basic internet package to have Bing, sorry Microsoft, and for me to pay an extra $20 a month if I want to use Google, or $40 if I want to use DuckDuckGo. The reason we have innovation is because if DuckDuckGo makes a better search engine, and it's a better search engine, it wins because it's better, and I can get to it just as easily for the same price as anything else. So Title II is close. We're close, but that's the big. That is the big issue everyone's talking about right now, and that people are hopefully going to contact their representatives about, because it's important.
So let's talk now a little bit about innovation. Let's start first with Reddit, where you see Reddit going, things that Reddit's doing now to stay relevant as the internet continues to morph. I look at digital data, and especially the internet, as something that almost is almost a living and breathing organism that continues to grow and kind of push its own path forward. So let's talk about things Reddit is doing to adapt to this morphing environment, and then maybe look at some of the startups that you've helped advise or that you've invested in, where you see them building the internet moving forward.
So, we last month had 170 million unique visitors, and they generated, I think, a little over 6 billion page views. So they are active. And I, to your point, I think Steve and I very long ago realized that at a certain scale, it almost become, it's a mind job, right? That's the population of Nigeria I think if I remember, you can fact check me. But that's amazing. Like using this platform every month, like the best sense we have is how good of a job we're doing, sort of keeping up user engagement, keeping up growth, and trying new ways to broaden the audience. Growth, like I said, it's doubled every year, but we're always looking for opportunities and different media to do that. And you know, for instance, we just announced a podcast. We've never done original content creation at Reddit until today. And we saw these stories that bubbled up all the time, and I've been a bit of a serial junkie. I don't know if you guys have. And I started my own podcast about 6 months ago, had a lot of fun doing it, talking about entrepreneurship and everything else. When I got the Reddit job back, I retired that podcast and put all that energy towards kind of like This American Life meets ESPN 30 for 30 for stories that bubble up on the front page of Reddit. So when the story we dropped today, this guy was going off to prison for drug possession charges. He's going to have 10 years federal prison. And he did an AMA the day before, an Ask Me Anything interview, and said, I'm about to go to jail, here's what I did, ask me anything. And it was this gripping interview. This wasn't, you know, the President of the United States did an AMA, but what makes the platform so powerful is some random guy about to go to jail can do an interview with hundreds of thousands or millions of people, and it can get more attention. And that's what happened. And that story turned out to be a very compelling one. And there was a whole bigger, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a much bigger story beyond that about this young man, Dante. And it was just a chance for him through the podcast to just tell that story. And I'll tell you, like, this stuff happens all the time on the internet. Humans, whether, I don't care what the social media platform is, Twitter, Facebook, you choose your favorite. The secret to any of them is not the technology. The secret to all of them is the people, is the users. And in a lot of ways, this podcast is a way to really highlight the fact that it's them who do all of this stuff. And it turns out we can learn a lot from each other. And I think when the internet is at its best, it's a way for us to get exposed to new ideas, new things, and new experiences we could never have otherwise. And the podcast is one way to do it. So we're not gonna. Everyone gets on me for like the front page still having Verdana, which I know is a terrible font, and I chose it, and it was a bad decision. That's on me. We're not gonna change it to Helvetica tomorrow. There are no plans to do drastic sort of. I mean, that's not a huge. It's kind of drastic change, but instead to find more creative ways to take the content that we know people are interested in and broaden the audience that can read it or consume it in whatever form they want.
And is that really just a customization of the internet? So we really do start to move to an internet of me where I can consume it on Reddit, I can listen to it, I can watch it, I can engage in the conversation and the dialogue any way that fits my profile?
Yes, and this is something that I think in a lot of ways is it's something everyone talked about. Even 10 years ago, people were like, the internet of me, this is what's going to happen. But a lot of the technology wasn't there yet, right? Even streaming video was a really hard problem in 2005. You know, the notion of podcasting didn't exist until we had an iPod. Like, that's crazy, right? But it did. Like, that made it a thing. So many of these means of distribution have come about and are at this point now because the technology now exists and because there's like a certain critical mass of acceptance and consumption, and it's only going to go up. And look, real talk, like maybe 3 years from now we're going to be talking about an Oculus Rift show, or I don't know, like I can't predict this stuff. I'm sure folks here at CES are working on it. But the important thing is we know that users do all the hard work. They make these platforms amazing. And if we can do things to help them tell their story on their terms to a bigger audience in a way that they're excited about, we will help them.
So let's talk about some of the future innovation that you see as you interact with startups, as you advise emerging companies and take a look at some of the technology that they're trying to build. And kind of in closing, a couple of minutes on what do you think the future of the internet looks like as we start to pull in these new diverse services, new technology, and really start to empower the consumer in entirely new ways?
Oh, there's so much stuff. This is why I went to 80 plus universities on the bus tour for my book and told everyone, get into tech, learn to code, please. Everyone said, right, software's eating the world. Everything is going to be affected. There are particular places. There's obvious stuff that you guys see here at CES, right? The smart everything, right? Our cars are going to have Wi-Fi. They're going to self-drive. Like, this stuff is happening. And I think the areas that I get most excited about that may not be as sexy, but that are really cool, are areas where we haven't really seen technology be used to its full potential to solve problems. So we talked about DC earlier, and we're very fortunate to have the founder of Capital Bells here. I had a series on The Verge called Small Empires, and we did a profile on this particular startup that found a way to, in a pretty clever manner, hack the bell system for when things are being voted on in Congress. There was no way to know if you weren't like there to hear it. And you imagine all these staffers who get real-time notifications when someone hearts the photo of their lunch, but they can't find out when a vote is happening. Like, seems like it should happen. So it took someone who was on the cusp of Washington, not in government, but like was in it, but like able to kind of build something outside of it, to build something that was, for all of us technologists, seemed really obvious. But now version 2, version 3, puts us in a world where maybe all of us as voters can have real-time feedback on those very bills that are being talked about and then eventually being voted on. And that's a more empowered electorate. Like, that's great. Like, I love that I can do all these great things and I can choose all these filters for my falafel. But I do also, as a citizen, want to know that this technology can have such a pervasive and difference-making impact even in areas like politics, right? That's the extreme of the most, I don't want to say technophobic, I guess I can. Like, that's the least innovative, one of the least innovative industries in the country, and ironically, one of the most important. But you don't have to spend a lot of time in DC to realize how that all ends up, how that sausage gets made. But look, what's so cool, and I'm telling you, look, 80 plus universities, all right? And I'm talking to students. This isn't just the Stanfords and that, actually the Ivies, I could go on. The best schools that I went to were state schools. And I'm not just saying that because I went to UVA. The best schools that I went to were state schools. Some of the best schools that I went to, where I met students who were paying off their tuition with money they were bringing in from an iPhone game, where they had already launched 2 or 3 companies, were everywhere. And these are students who put what I was doing and what Steve was doing when we were in college 14 years ago to shame. To shame. And that's exciting. That's innovation. That's progress. I get to talk to teenagers who are already shipping, like they're asking for feedback now that they've shipped their 3rd app. And that's great. And for the rest of us, hold on to your butts, because it's always the upstarts who are drinking our milkshakes.
The change is coming. I'm Sean Dubervac. We're here at the 2015 International CES. We're talking with Alexis Ohanian, author of Without Their Permission, founder of Reddit. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us here, and we hope to see you here next year.
Thank you for having me. I will be back.